have that suspicion, then don't get married in the first place.
If you're married, you keep your shit in your pants, not anywhere else. You're not supposed to wave around.
Dr. Dre's wife would come into play in a situation where a prenup is to be challenged. The outrage was based upon expectation versus what actually happens, right? Not everybody lives the lives that we think that we're supposed to be living on TV.
If you have a daughter, as a father, would you like your daughter to go through the same thing?
Hey, it's your boy AMG Denz, and you're joining us on the Stripping the Dipping podcast. Now, this episode is a bit of a strange one. It's a bit of a nuanced one, let's say, because the origins of where this episode originally began started off with the young Sergio Perez, in Monaco. He just won the race. Ferrari had just self-imploded. His newborn child had just been given birth to, like, literally less than 7 days ago. And let's just say, Sergio Perez had a bit of a bachata going on. His hips were doing a bit of a Shakira as some footage surfaced online of him getting a bit more handsy than he usually would on a bull. This time, not a bull. This time, an actual woman. And it had the internet in absolute disarray because obviously a lot of people were disgusted by his actions, as he was found to be being unfaithful, being a bit promiscuous, being not completely true and thou clean to his wife and obviously his newborn by indulging in a bit of infidelity, put it that way. So there's been so many debates and so many discussions about it. I know that a lot of people were triggered, Georgina. And I just as a disclaimer, just so I don't catch any corn, because I'm not gonna be the one catching any stray bullets today. Yeah, I just was in the back end of a conversation or a debate or a tobacco with like Georgina, the awesome Malik, and of course Jay.
In my defense, if you're married, you keep your shit in your pants, not anywhere else. You're not supposed to wave around.
Hey, he needed to get a bit more cooling to his package, let's say. When Red Bull they've been trying to work on their cooling package recently. So yeah, guys, just what was your initial reaction to like the outcry or like the backlash to young Checo Perez's actions post Monaco Grand Prix win?
Wow, seems like so long ago now.
I know, right?
The thing is, I was in two minds. I was kind of my initial reaction is to actually kind of look for like concrete details or footage as to what he actually did, because it was a grainy picture, and it's like, well, but whilst I was trying to seek out context and details, I'm also very wary that I don't want to come across like I'm just trying to brush it aside or turn a blind eye or whatever, because often when you come along and you're like saying, okay, well, what's he really doing though? The first thing that just sounds to everybody like, oh, here we go. You just get boys sticking together, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, but I don't know. I still don't really know. I mean, he was dancing with somebody. He had his hands on somebody. His apology, I think, was more telling than any of the footage, the meek kind of disingenuous way in which he communicated himself. So, yeah, I don't know. I think when your wife has just given birth, 7 days ago, I think that it's. I mean, come on.
That's the thing.
I mean, it's never correct. If you're married, it's never correct. Let's just go on record and say that. But you've got someone recovering and trying to get used to a complete life change, and you're out there just like, well, I'm going to win races, get drunk, and feel up random blondes or whatever the hair color was. I don't know. It's hard to defend, put it that way.
Exactly, probably harder to defend than the FIA defending the human championship, but the
That's
human era champion. Yeah, definitely not. Jay, I mean, that's your take, and I think a lot of people would have said that as well. And for everyone listening as well, shout out to Jay as well. Jay, do you want to just introduce yourself too, and kind of also your other alter ego Twitter account that we all love as well?
Yeah, so I'm. My main F1 account is at filmer with the I is a 1, so it's annoying because every time I tell anyone out loud, I have to explain that it's a 1, not an I. Anyway, that was a mistake. And yeah, as well as posting a lot of sort of angry, contentious stuff through that, I also run the @WinJerSpice account, which, according to the people who it triggers, is a great source of shame because I am a grown-ass man and I should know better. And I have no excuse for being so immature all of the time. But definitely check it out. It's funny.
Well said there, Jay, as well. And to be honest, I think those people that are calling you immature and like just saying that you need to grow up, I think they also need to grow up. And I think that the team that they support also has a lot of men in high positions that should probably grow up and reconsider their actions from time to time too. But we'll touch on that a bit later as well. And
yeah, I think generally, sorry to interrupt there, but generally there's this misconception I think that let's say younger folks have, is that you kind of get more sensible and mature as you age. I think in this day and age, I don't think that's true. I think that as soon as you kind of hit 25, 30, you kind of enter in a sort of stasis. So if you're still immature by your 30th birthday, then that's basically how you're going to stay into your like pension age. So there we go. Like, I mean, the banter evolves slightly, but it doesn't go away. And the WinJerSpice account, like, people, it's an easy one to take the kind of ageism route. Oh, you're too old for this. Like, I don't care. Just keep getting angry. It's fine. So,
exactly it, and it just plays into the things that we say about them and that particular community as well, Jay. So I'm with you on that one too. And actually, because Jorgina said you need to do the intro and you need to get the guests in properly, we also have the amazing Malik, aka Ashy Larry's brother, aka Mr. Miami, Florida, which we had earlier on in the season when we were talking about the very big backlash regarding the Miami Gardens Grand Prix, of course. Malik, how are you doing today? And like, I guess we talked about it earlier as well, but 4th of July in America. What's up?
Man, first of all, thank you guys for having me. Second, before I even say anything, Jay, I remember, I don't know, maybe it was a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago, when you were kind of going back and forth on your decision as to whether or not you kind of wanted to completely abandon the Winger account. And you remember that? I remember that. I remember that. Yeah, because like you said, it seemed like so long ago. And I was very, very disappointed that even came up as an option for you, because to trigger is to live, sir. And you triggered so many individuals that the idea that you may have been finished or that your job was complete, that kind of disappointed me a little bit. I think you should not have even contemplated that and gone in even harder, because, you got to piss off people. But no, I guess getting back to the specific topic, I guess a little bit of background on myself for those people who may not remember. I'm an attorney here in South Florida. My main practice, my main specialty is divorce and family. So, and dependency. So I do other stuff, but that's the main thing that I do. So I deal with this kind of stuff every single day, like literally every single day. When I saw the video of Sergio Perez, it didn't bother me, right? Didn't bother me at all. Obviously, because I deal with this kind of subject matter, I have, I see even worse types of situations. So one of the things that I had actually discussed with folks, because of course I'm a man and inherently, during this situation, everything is looked at from a men suck perspective, and we generally do, as 9 times out of 10 we do suck. But I ended up throwing this back at people, and as a divorce attorney for the last 12, 13 years, I basically said this reality. In all of the hundreds of cases that I've had, I have never one time had a couple divorce strictly because of infidelity. It does not happen. Doesn't happen. So when everybody saw the video and they were like, "Oh my gosh," I'm sure it's happened somewhere. You see it on TV and stuff. But when everybody did their whole, "Oh my gosh, he was cheating on his wife and he just had a kid and all this other, he's married and the whole nine," I'm like, well, wait a second. We saw 0.4 maybe of a video, and we've come to all of these different conclusions. And I thought that was kind of wrong. I thought it was funny, but a lot of it, kind of depended upon, where you were from, whether you were married at all, what your own family's dynamic was, whether your pops dipped out on your mom or vice versa, which is, it does happen too. Moms do this stuff also. So I saw some of this, and then, depending upon where they lived in Western countries, the outrage was based upon expectation versus what actually happens, right? Not everybody lives the lives that we think that we're supposed to be living on TV. And so I put it in its correct perspective and was like, it wasn't that big deal. And I was like, "Oh, you're just a man. You're thinking about your testicles and all this other stuff." And I'm just like, oh my gosh, all right, well, whatever. And so at that point, I pulled out my inner winger and just decided to just piss off people just because. There you go. So that's why I think you should not get rid of that account, because there's 7 billion people to piss off. You've maybe done a few thousand or 100. So you got more work to do, sir.
Well, that's good. I like that encouragement. That's fun. That's fun encouragement. I'll take that on board. I remember this conversation the next time I'm down.
It's like, you know what? I can piss them off.
I mean, I've got a whole drafts folder here of things that were probably a bit too offensive. So I don't know.
You maybe only got to the C drawer. You got D, E, F, man. You could keep on. And the numbers, Roman numerals. I mean, Cyrillic, Sanskrit. I mean.
But Malik, what I wanted to do was I wanted to kind of outline this one, because for me anyway, like, the question I wanted to put forward to you guys is, well, what do you perceive as cheating? And more on the legal side of it, Malik, because I studied law too, and I did like a family law module. At least in the UK, like when we were doing family law, as disgusting as some people view cheating, depending on what definition you give to it, it's not illegal. It's not deemed as a punishable crime in the UK. So even if a man does that in the UK, when it comes to family law, you can't get a divorce even if the guy cheats. Correct.
A man?
So to put the question forward to you guys, what do you deem as cheating? Because some people will look at it in terms of physical cheating. So obviously having a sexual relationship with a person and being intimate and doing the deed as such as cheating. Other people see cheating as emotional cheating. So in other words, even if it's not just like you having like a relationship with this person beyond like a couple of days, months, whatever, it's just a case of you even just like sleeping with them for a night. So you doing stuff basically behind your partner's back that you wouldn't normally do if they were there. Things that they wouldn't be happy with you doing. That's what they perceive as cheating. And that's where, even if Sergio Perez didn't like have any intimate relationship with this woman that you seen in this clip, getting a bit of a groove on with, they still perceive it as cheating because it's something he wouldn't do in front of his wife, or something they feel that emotionally is insensitive because he just had a kid and his wife's had to make a sacrifice of bearing kids whilst he's out here like living his best life. So Jorgina and Jay, and obviously Malik as well, what's your take on what you define as cheating, and like Malik as well, the legal ramifications of cheating? Are there any?
I'll let you guys go first. I'll go last.
Yeah. With the concept of cheating, I mean, obviously social media will just amplify the commonly accepted sort of parameters. People will obviously go by their own moral compass and then they'll judge accordingly. And then there's the layer of excess outrage that inevitably follows when people are talking into the Twitter in a way where it's just kind of like everyone commenting has never done anything wrong, and they are holier than thou, and they can therefore just impart this. But to go back to it, what's cheating is really defined within the parameters of whichever relationship you're talking about. And even then, it's a case of one person's idea of what's cheating may conflict with, I mean, usually in any conventional relationship, if the man sleeps with someone else, let's say, there's the kind of the common scenario that's generally accepted to be cheating. However, then there's you go back from that, but there's these other things like we were talking about, like say talking online, or even like watching pornography or things like that. That the other part of that relationship, the female in the relationship may not like this stuff, may deem it a breach of trust, disrespect, and it's a case of, at that point, I mean, everyone can have their opinions, but it's really up to the two people involved as to whether or not they really feel like, I don't feel like I've crossed a line, I feel like you have crossed a line. Well, is anyone really objectively in the wrong there, or are you just not compatible as people? I don't know. There becomes a point where the line has to be defined by the people in the relationship. They may not agree, and I don't think that's necessarily a wrong-right situation. But to just finish up by looking at Sergio's situation, on the surface of it, it looks disrespectful. You make assumptions that his wife probably doesn't appreciate being humiliated by seeing him and grinding up against somebody else on. It's disrespectful, but we don't know. They may have an open relationship for all I know. I have no idea. So the judgment really is irrelevant and moot, as far as, like most things with Twitter, we all sound off, but ultimately it often doesn't really affect what it is we're talking about, and most of the people that we talk about probably don't see what we're saying individually. So yeah, that's kind of my take.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair and very balanced view of like looking at it as well, Jay, because as you've ultimately said as well, it will come down to the two individuals in that relationship, what the parameters are, of course, and where the boundaries in that sense too. But obviously, I want to get a different perspective as well. I want to be a bit more controversial and poke Jorgina, because Jorgina, what's your take on what do you just generally define as cheating? And then, do you think that Sergio was guilty in his actions? What we saw, because reaction from him probably wasn't the best PR reaction we've ever seen from any Red Bull employee. Number one, and then two, I mean, again, not playing the devil's advocate, because I like the devil, as I always say, but a lot of people bring in other factors like, it was Sergio Perez's first race win in Monaco. Monaco is the crown race of basically a Formula One driver's career. It's the pinnacle, of what a driver could win. So he should be able to like party and have a bit of slack. Maybe that's maybe some of the excuses people try and make. So some other people as well might try and argue, that it's a very emotional time for Sergio Perez, because up until that point, he was still kind of on a very short leash with Red Bull. We didn't know whether or not he's going to get a contract extension. We had seen that his career was up kind of in questions, because his status in the team was questioned when he asked the team to perform team orders the race before in Barcelona, and then they said, no, we're not doing that. We're sticking with our guns. We're going to give Max the favorable strategy, although whether we like it or not, I think Max was faster when he had the DRS rectified in clean air. But those things aside, what do you define as cheating? And did Sergio Perez fall short?
Okay. First of all, let me ask you a question. Do you think, if you have a daughter, as a father, would you like your daughter to go through the same thing? Would you like your daughter to have a husband who's going out with another woman, having an affair and all those, and come back home and say, oh, that was my mistake, I'll just have you here? And do you think your daughter will be able to have 100% trust on him and live her life in a proper way? I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it when it comes to your own children. Okay. So the same way, Sergio will get that if that happens to his daughter as well. But for now, he doesn't care about it. All he wants is to show that he's okay, he made a mistake and this and that. People do make mistakes. It's not like everyone is 100% okay. Everyone is perfect. People do mistakes. But if you're married and do this mistake, honey, then you're not up for a marriage. You're getting married to a person because you're committed. When you're getting married, you're committed to the person. You're going to an altar in front of God. You're saying, okay, I'm gonna do this and that out of love. If you're getting married out of love, then you can't go around with another woman and do all the things. Well, if I'm being frank, you can't get your dick and go to another vagina and go poke every single vagina and come back and tell your wife, oh, no, 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 I only love your vagina.
Yeah, you
I
can.
just go and check the others. You can't say that.
You can do that. You can do that.
Jeez.
I deal with that
Ding,
every
ding, 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 ding,
I deal with
ding,
that
ding,
every
ding.
single day. I promise you, you can do that.
So
But Jorgina,
that's
like,
not okay.
that I definitely understand, Jorgina. But what do you also think of the other, like what I described earlier as emotional cheating? So it's not necessarily, the
The
deepest deep
physical
kind
part.
of like physical part. It's the
Yeah.
emotional stuff too, like stuff that you probably
Yeah.
wouldn't do in front of your partner, but because you're in a different environment amongst different people and you thought you might get away with it, that's probably why you've done it. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, he thought it would never get revealed. That's why he was putting up all the statements and that PR. Okay, first of all, Red Bull really need a good PR team. They suck at it.
We'll touch on that later, by the way. But yeah.
Yeah, they really do. Yo, Horner, really, at least pay us. We will do your PR because we are better than that. All right. The thing is, like, emotionally, I'm pretty sure the wife is really damaged because it hurts if you're loving the husband, if you are in love with your partner. And I don't think a person can see your person, the person that you really love, to go on with another person hanging around, and then it's like a leisure time, and then come back home and say it's all okay, and you'll be like super happy that he's home. No, you will be getting emotionally hurt and wounded. And every second, as I said earlier, every second, even though he's not doing anything afterwards, you won't be having that 100% trust that you had earlier. Even though you're going to put up a broken glass together, there are marks left around. So it's a broken relationship that you'll be having. And the thing is, like, if you're going for a marriage, in my opinion, don't get married super young because you're not ready for a marriage afterwards, because you get matured later on. For most people, not everyone, but for most people, they get matured later on and they are like, this is not for me. Why am I stuck with a marriage like this? Those things comes up into their minds. So, in different perspectives. Yeah.
But also, just another question I wanted to ask you, Georgina, and I think it would be really good as well to get a female perspective. What you mentioned there that women can be broken, they can be like emotionally damaged, or like very hurt after such things like this to happen. And I fully understand, and I agree with you. I side with you on that completely. But then my question to you, Georgina, and it's not. This isn't me as an AMG Denz. This is just me trying to like stir the pot a bit more. Then if these women are so hurt and so broken after such events, why do they stay in the relationships? Because somebody, again, this isn't me. It's not me. I'm just putting it out there. I want to get rubbed out on Twitter or cancelled. It's not me.
No. You have a point. Yes.
Just for the
I
sake of
do
the debate.
understand that as well. Yeah. Because
Yeah,
the thing is, like, most of the marriages there are beneficial marriages. Okay. When it comes to high classes, if it's for me, I would ask him to go fuck himself and I would have lived. Okay. But I would have left the man.
Just stick a pin
But
as well there, Georgina. What I was going to say
yeah,
was to be fair, to give women the benefit of the doubt, and I think you should, is sometimes women stay in these relationships even if they're unhappy because of the children. Because they don't want the household dynamic to change. They want to give the kids, the fairness of having two loving parents, even if they're not in a loving relationship with each other. They still want that, like, obviously environment of having two loving parents living in the same house, cohabiting together, being able to provide together as one unit, rather than what you might get if the parents would split up, and then you've got this kind of ongoing problem, which Malik will probably address later on as well, when you then have custody, then you have child support, then you have all these other factors that come into it. So I was going to throw you some rope there, but on the more cynical point of view, like, why is it that some people may even use like the likes of, let's say, Jay-Z and Beyonce. Beyonce can get any woman any woman, any man in the world, or any woman as well, probably.
Woman,
You know. But like she decided to stay with Hove. She started to stay with Jay-Z and his fat lips. So like, why is the question then? If she was so hurt or so, broken by some of his actions that he was accused of.
Money plays a big part, Denzel. Money plays a big part, and the status plays a big part. Now, if Jay-Z and Beyonce, that's a power couple, a duo, and Beyonce anyway has the upper right at the upper hand. So imagine if Beyonce divorced Jay-Z, then well, Jay-Z won't be having that much of a status like Beyonce, but Beyonce will be a single mom as well. It's a total different view, but together they are showing. Okay, it's not really showing like inside there might be issues, but for the outside they are showing that family is what matters. My husband is okay. We will move on. We will pass this and that. But it all comes down to the status, the financial benefits, and brand values. Because the people that we are talking about are not ordinary people. They represent something. They are having some sort of a level of class, a lifestyle, so these things definitely going to affect. And for a woman, children comes first, obviously, after becoming a mom for most of the women. But rather than that, I think in here it plays a huge, I mean, sometimes inside families, all these high class families, even though they have all these scandals, they're gaining something out of these marriages that they're having. So they will be having some sort of a deal. I don't know. I'm just assuming, right? So every single time an issue comes like this, only few percentages of people go to the court, and others, just like Malik said, no one is getting a divorce because of that, because there's a huge benefit and a profit comes through scandals as well for the other partner.
Mhm.
If it makes sense.
No, it does, and I think like Jay, and I wanted to kind of go back to, because I think Jay is kind of like me in the situation. We're kind of, I wouldn't say on the fence, but we're more kind of just in the balance kind of thing of it, in terms of you got emotions on one side, but then you also have kind of just like the perspective and kind of the individuality on the other side. But Malik, I'm gonna tag you in. What's your kind of take on some of the comments that Georgina's made there, and how sincere is it, and how do you think that plays out in in today's society?
Well, first thing I'll say is it's not going to happen. But I'll just say this as a person who deals with some high net worth, some middle worth, a bunch of broke, divorces and stuff. I'm also a mediator, right? So I in certain situations when I've got a couple who, you don't see me unless somebody's already filed. Sometimes they'll see me right before to see what their options are so they can try to, prevent spending a ton of money, which it shouldn't cost a lot anyway. But, and I end up having to give not necessarily advice, but options. Okay. The first thing I'll say is everybody divorce yourselves of the idea that it is men doing this to women. Okay. And also divorce yourself the idea that it is mostly men, or it's more likely to be men doing this to women. Okay. I would honestly tell you that the only difference in where that number may seem skewed one way or the other is because men tend to do everything that they can to not file for divorce. Men don't file. They just stay out of court. They will just suck it up and take it, or they'll leave and they'll be married for 10, 15, 20 years and never see each other, but they won't file. Women are more likely to file, first off. Second off, men more so, believe it or not, than women in the 12, 13 years of actual divorces that I've been dealing with, broke, middle income, and high net worth. High net worth people don't care about their kids at all. They let's just tell you that. They don't care. They barely even see them. They could care less about the kids. Broke folks see their kids. Dads, more likely than not, men more likely than not, are going to do anything and everything that they can to try, if they have kids, to try to, if they're married and they have kids, to try to keep their kids and their family together and let their wives sleep around and do all this other stuff that they've been accused of than to divorce them. Okay. Both sides. Men are more likely to keep the kids together. Women are more likely to file this divorce or seek a divorce because someone outside found out about the infidelity from either side. Okay. And then they had to hear about a whole bunch of stuff and their family gets involved. And then sometimes you got cultural stuff. Now, the way, the cultures and stuff that you come from shape your ideas of marriage, right? And a lot of that stuff is, it's cultural, it's general, gender and all this other stuff. Men, for the most part, I mean, there's a couple of suckers out there that want to get married, but for the most part, men don't really give a shit one way or the other about whether we're married or not. We'll just date you to death. We could be loyal and date you to death. Women are like, I need to marry because Disney movies and all that nonsense. But, because it is. But, some people get married out of love. Some people have arranged marriages. Some people get married out of convenience. Some people get married for a whole host of reasons. The thing is, none of us are in those marriages. Kind of like what Jay was saying. None of us are a part of those relationships. We're not a part of that origin story. We're out. And so when we try to apply what we think our ideas of togetherness or marriage and then this other stuff on other people, and then we start to try to speak for them, that's where everything goes wrong. I know, Perez. I know him, Checo. I don't know his wife's name. If I couldn't pick her out of a lineup, I don't think most people could. The only reason why we know that he's married is probably it came up somewhere, or that they had a kid is probably that it came up somewhere. Maybe somebody saw a picture, but we're not in their relationship. Like Jay was saying, there are a ton of open relationships, right? And open relationships are basically don't bring what you're doing outside of the house back home to where I would have to find out about it. This could have been a breach of that. And and somebody on Red Bull's team that was video and all this stuff, because people can't, it's not like when we were kids, you shut up, just keep all your dirt away from home and don't let anybody know about it. Now everybody's got to put it on Twitter and like what I saw, so who knows what they have. It could be because who knows, right? And so I don't think we should inject our own personal opinions and feelings in other people's relationships. Anything that he would have done previous to this video that she knew about, it was up to her to make the decision as to whether or not it rose to the level of her leaving, right? Cheating, which was, the initial question, what is cheating to me, right? And yeah, like Jay said, and Den said, yeah, cheating's not illegal. Cheating is subjective. Cheating can be, I went out and I had sex with some other person without my wife's permission, right? Or without her consent or knowledge, whatever the case might be. Cheating is also going out and spending money that my wife didn't say that it was okay that I could go out and spend. Cheating is also starting an emotional relationship. To me, cheating to me is you're starting a whole full-fledged relationship behind the back of another person, right? That is equal to or greater than the one that you're already in. If I was in war, right? If I was in war and I'm getting ready to have like a suicide mission and I'm probably going to die the next day and I got 24 hours and I'm married, somebody's going to get it. I'm just telling you, right? They don't get it. If I can get it, it's going to get got, right? And you go, oh, I can't, and maybe the chick that I got it with came to my funeral after the mission failed or something and was like, oh yeah, that last night was the greatest night of my life. Because of course she'd say that, right? But, is my wife going to get upset? All right, she might, be a little whatever, but I'm dead, so I don't care, right? So, but it shouldn't be unreasonable that I did that. So what I'm saying is people people live their lives and have their relationships. However, I'm not trying to, David Letterman this or Dr. Phil this, but we can't interject an institution that we're not in on other people based upon our expectations that can never be met, even in our own lives. Mm-hmm. Damn it.
Yeah, And I think that's fair. I think that also is a fair point as well there, Malik. And yeah, I agree with a lot of the things you said there too, in terms of just how the expectations are and kind of what we know compared to what is actually the case in real life. And I think there's a balance between the two. I think it's hard for us to really get involved and say, well, Sergio did this or Sergio didn't do this, because we only get like a screenshot of like maybe what happened throughout an entire evening. But at the same time as well, I think I see where Georgina's coming from in terms of he's a role model, and he's probably, of all the Red Bull characters and figures we have at Red Bull, Sergio is probably actually the most likable. So for him to get caught out potentially doing something like that, I think is what shocked a lot of people too, and what made
Let me ask you
their
this. Let me ask you
relationship.
this. Let me ask you
Go for
this. Let me ask you this. Because you're in the UK, right? I'm in the States, unfortunately. Jay, where you at?
UK.
UK. All right. Georgina, she is on the moon. Okay. So here's the thing. So the question I ask is, we all know that there are some cultures where men will have men will have multiple wives, right? There's some Middle Eastern cultures, I think some parts of Nigeria, all this other stuff, right? We all know that to be the reality, that is a legal thing in certain parts of the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? Okay, now, when we find out that a person has multiple wives, we do one of two things. We either, oh my gosh, I feel so sorry for those women, they feel whatever, right? That's based upon where we came from. But on the flip side, none of us ever hear about or know, how did that dude go about getting that new wife? If we can accept the fact that he has multiple wives, no one ever questions the sausage making. It's possible that, hey, I'm going out to the club and meeting this lady and we dance and she could dance and we do all this footloose stuff, whatever. And I end up with a new wife, right? Now, in some cultures, that's perfectly fine. Just the culture that we came from, it may not be, right? So are we questioning the cultures that we come from, or are we questioning the cultures of the other person, many of which those cultures have, thousands of years older than ours, and we're acting as if those are wrong, right? And so I'm just saying we got to make sure that our own, cultural sensitivities, we can't place those on other people. And even if they're from the same culture, if people do certain stuff in families, there's some families that put raisins in potato salad for some reason, right? Not saying anything other than that, but, we know that exists. And we think that that's blasphemous to do, right? But some people just do it. So we can't question their decision to do that. It just happens. This happens. All right, let me shut up. There you go.
No, but I think that also is a valid point as well, Malik. And again, like you mentioned, culturally as well, culture plays a lot into how we perceive marriages, how we receive relationships, what our expectations or perception of that is. And actually, another bone I wanted to throw you as well, Malik, kind of another talking point is, Georgina rightfully mentioned how cheating can be very destructive to women. It can break them either physically, mentally, emotionally. It's not right, if it affects her in that way. But also
Okay.
another kind of aspect I wanted to do is from the flip side. Recently, again, with your kind of background with family law and divorce law and stuff like that, we saw like the whole Amber Heard and Johnny Depp kind of case recently and how that paid out. And people haven't really mentioned kind of the long-term effects that will have in his career, regardless of whether he did the stuff he was accused of or not. And then I didn't do any research for this episode, so I hope the viewers forgive me. But kind of just in the back of my head, I was thinking of similar kind of scenarios where, like, there's been a divorce or someone's found to be unfaithful or a relationship or a marriage broken down. And then there's been some like animosity or debate as to the aftermath. One I was thinking of as well is Dr. Dre and his divorce with Nicole Young. They were married for almost 24 years. And then, they get into this proceedings where she wants a settlement of over $100 million US. From your perspective, Malik, and I'm going to bring Jay and bring obviously Georgina into that too. How is that fair? Like, it should like, the other half of a relationship be able to take so much away from a marriage if it's the case that in, like, let's say Dr. Dre, for example, he self-made, he made his own beats, he came up on his own, and it's a case where she came into the relationship or she came into his career when he already had all of this stuff?
Okay. Well, so the question specifically is, does she deserve to get that stuff?
Right. Because
Whatever
the
it was
question
that she
is,
got. Okay.
because what people will say is, what did she do to deserve it? Or like, how do you estimate 100 million in terms of her gaining that from the relationship when Dr. Dre was already worth that before?
Well, one, he wasn't worth all that. Two, I mean, we're talking 25 years, okay? Because I think they got married in what, 97, 98, right? He probably had about that. But 97, 98, well, no, it might have been more than that. But anyway, it was in the mid 90s, okay? So the main question is, who's asking? Because one, you got people who don't have that saying that this certain amount is a lot. If I have $10,000 and you want 5,000, that's a lot, right? If I have 700 or 800 million and you want 100 million, and we can stand up, $1 still buys the same dollar. It's just $1 to a person that only has 10. That's a lot. To a person that has 700 million, that's not that much. So, same thing would be like with Tiger Woods and all that stuff. So the idea then would be, okay, well, while you were making whatever amounts of money, because there's different formulas that go into it. They can say, okay, well, for the most part, and it depends on the state too. How much did you have at the moment of marriage? Okay. And then you look at the contribution of the other spouse. Okay, we had a kid. Let's say Dr. Dre, when he started having more and more kids, but Dr. Dre was going to the studio, where was his wife with the brand new kids that she had? She was at home. So she was enabling him to go to the studio to do all of those things and not have to worry about his kids and make all that extra money. She was at the house doing that. If they split it 50-50, then you could probably cut into the amount of money that he would have been able to make if he'd have been at the house watching those kids for 50% of the time also. You see what I'm saying? And so
Yep.
you go forward from there, and Dr. Dre was touring 100, let's say he was touring 150 days out of the 360, okay? Or he was touring 182 or 183 days, which is half the year, okay? And the other half, he was back at home or doing, whatever stuff around the house or studio stuff. But 360, or let's say 350, because they had 30 days of vacation, Mom's was at the house with these badass kids dealing with all of the whatever. We're assuming they're bad, but they probably were, right? They're his. So she was at the house doing all of that, and in that 182, 183 days, he made so much more than what he had the year before and the year before. So how can you say that that's not her? She is enabling him to be able to make that, right? Could he hire some person? Yeah. But did he? No. So that's just the reality of what it is. And so that's just like, what was it? I can't say the thing, but talk about Kobe, and I think it was a Drake line saying you wasn't with me shooting in the gym, right? Drake and Rick Ross, right? And so it's basically the same situation, So I deal with people in those cases. Does she deserve that? I mean, that's a subjective number, right? And there's formulas for that. But if she enabled his income to increase that much, yeah, she deserves what contribution she put in. And it's hard for people to understand that, because 99.9% of everybody that's, passing judgment is broke as shit, right? We would love to be able to get the 100 million, be like, 100 million, I'm never going to make that anyway. But I would love to make that. She got off, she got over. Same thing could be with Mackenzie Bezos, right? How many billion did she get, right? And she was there from day one, and she didn't even want half, and she's giving all of her stuff away. I wish you'd give me some of that, right? But
I know, right?
You know what I'm saying? But
yeah.
Without her, or whatever. So we're passing judgment because all we're looking at is we're saying, well, she didn't do jack. She was just there having kids. She married into a good situation. She might have hooked up one of those commitments that we have no idea. Right. So we can't, pass judgment just because she came up. And the thing is, then you have all these other people that are like, yeah, you know what? I want to come up. How many women who had all kinds of options decided to go the Kim Kardashian way? Right. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and how did that change things? What was it? Lawrence Fishburne's daughter thought that she wanted, to do porn because she wanted to be like Kim Kardashian and come up. And what did she end up being like? I had a good one, but I didn't want to say it because, but anyway, so, I mean, so, you know what I'm saying? So people make these decisions because they want to shortcut stuff. We can't. Does she deserve it? A judge gave it to her. So clearly that's what happened. And, sometimes it happens. Sometimes, you get it. I had a case last year where the lady was perfectly fine settling for $30,000. Right. And I said, no, because you're looking at the law wrong. This is what you're supposed to get. When we were done, she got $330,000 in a check. Right. And, now, she had to pay me some of that too, but she got a lot, and she still to this day has no idea how or why, and they settled for that because I told them, I said, listen, I could look for more. There is more, but she's totally fine with this. If you're fine with this, we're fine with this. Otherwise, it's going to be more. They said, how do you spell that last name? Right. So it just happens. It happens. Yeah. If she deserves it. Yep. She deserves it.
Okay.
Probably.
Malik, I'm glad that you gave us that insight into how the formulas break it down and that perspective, because for me again, I'm just disclaiming because I know I'm gonna get backlash from this. Your connection, man. Moving
Yeah,
reliability.
connection, it's really working. Yeah, it's like Red Bull. It's fast but not reliable.
Oh yeah. Well, listen, I was actually gonna throw another hypothetical in there because I went on a really nice monologue and no one was here to listen to it. So here I go. So Jorgina, Jay, I want you to have input on this one. So recently I've been watching this TV program called 90 Day Fiancé. I'm sure Malik, is all with the latest series, but in the UK it is something of a lost treasure. So long story short, basically you get these guys that are looking for love, and they have 90 days to basically get married to their fiance. And it's the other way around too. You get girls that go out to other countries and bring their partner from other countries to the US to get married within 90 days. Now you've got this character, which he's self-built. He brags about having a Mercedes C-Class. He's a real estate kind of guy as well. It's not me, by the way. I just put that out there. It's not me, but he's doing quite well in life. He's already had a previous relationship where he's had 2 kids. That relationship broke down, and he's paying the child support and stuff for that. But bringing it to kind of where we are in today's episode of that show, he's dating this woman from another country. She's come over to basically get married with him. And the big elephant in the room is he wants a prenup because, in quotation marks, he has an empire that he wants to protect. He's got assets that he wants to basically keep in the event that the relationship or marriage doesn't work out, considering that they're rushing to get married to suit this 90 Day Fiancé kind of show and the kind of elements of what makes the show unique. So Jorgina, I'll start with you. What's your take just on a prenup in a marriage or just in a relationship as a tool? And would you let's say Lewis Hamilton was at Jorgina, you're the love of my life. I'm gonna get down on one knee. You have to sign these documents. What would you say?
Jorgina, can we get together and spread all kinds of positivity
around the world?
Around the world together.
All right. Prenup. It depends on the person. It depends on the person's personality and the relationship that he or she is having with another person. For me, if it was Louise and he comes and asks for a prenup, I would have signed it because a person, what I believe is, whether it's the wife or the husband, they should be able to survive by themselves without depending on another person. But if the other person is asking for a prenup, then you should be able to say yes for that. Because if you're in love with the person and you're just getting married because you want to stay with the person, then you won't be asking for his properties and the money and all the stuff. Because when you're married, you will be having, or you have to share a house. But like I said, it really depends on the person's personality and the relationship that the person is having with the other person. Because sometimes you might like it, but sometimes you will feel offended. It depends on the person. So
Yeah, that's fair. And Jay, I want you to chime in as well on this one. Like,
Ah,
I'm trying to think who would be the equivalent. Shakira looks like she might be on the market soon,
the thing
depending on what's
is,
happening with UK.
yeah, I mean, like that's a good shout actually. Like, I got a lot of time for Shakira. She
Hips don't
does live
lie.
so much for me, but yeah, the thing is with prenups, they're, I think, kind of offensive, and they establish a power dynamic from the very first moment. And I think that people need to really be wary. You use this example, obviously, of a celebrity, like Lewis Hamilton, Shakira, and it's kind of like, would you accept it if it's a celebrity who you adore and who you look up to, versus would you accept it if it was just someone who wasn't famous at all but just had a lot of money? And it's like, you probably wouldn't really feel comfortable with having a rock solid kind of, you get zero, you leave this relationship with zero, or you leave with exactly what you brought into it, from somebody who is wealthy. If there's someone who you're kind of a fan of as well, I mean, the dynamic just puts you at a complete, it gives you no power. What you're essentially saying is that I adore you so much that I'm going to be financially dependent on you. You're going to be able to then basically do whatever you want. You can do Sergio Perez type behavior. I can't do anything about it because I don't have any money. There's a prenup in place. I have to look after the kids. I can't afford them on my own. Like, I think it's a mess. And I think, speaking of somebody who, whenever he's broken up a long-term relationship, and I have broken up a couple of them, I feel so terrible and guilty. Like, the idea of like sitting there and like kind of going over every little thing, like, well, that's mine, or the last long-term relationship, like before I got married, the relationship before that, the way it ended was, yeah, I'm gonna just go. And when you move out of this place, you just take whatever you want. Just have everything. Like, it was my way of basically just, I gave her all the possessions, so like I don't have to feel bad anymore, about the heartbreak, the guilt. It didn't. By the way, it didn't end with any kind of cheating. It was just, we got together. We got together young. We grew apart. It ended. She didn't really want it to end. I felt terrible, and my way of just basically overcoming my own guilt was just to let her take all the crap, really, all the stuff. You have the television, you have the good DVDs, I don't, whatever. The idea of sitting down and thinking, okay, I've already shattered your universe. I'm now going to like say that I deserve all the good DVDs, and I deserve all the what little we have in the joint bank account. I can't imagine it. But prenups, no. I would absolutely say that to anybody who's really, I understand sometimes why people are like, okay, well, I don't get married. I don't want you just marrying me for the money or whatever. Well, if you have that suspicion, then don't get married in the first place. Prenups, I just think they establish a power dynamic and they keep people trapped, and it's just, I don't like them at all.
And I think that's fair. I think I'm glad you said that as well, Jay, because Georgina kind of gave us it more from the perspective of like, like there's somebody you idolize and adore. And like, I think you can always make exceptions in that case. But in like a normal kind of this relationship where you're pretty much equal, or the other person or the other half might just be like slightly financially better off than you, it does kind of create that kind of like cloud over kind of like the relationship and kind of like the status and like who's more at power, who's more at play, and kind of also it sets almost like a tone already of like, okay, well, if the relationship's not going to work out, I want this. Where I would like to think that if people are going to get into a relationship, it's not because they're thinking what if, but more so because they believe that they've got something which can last the test of time ultimately. So that's, I think, kind of, a very interesting kind of perception as well. And I think kind of the one I would more go down to. But Malik, your kind of opinion on that too, and view as well, having like dealing with stuff like that on a day-to-day basis as well with, people that want those kind of things, especially, in the 90-day fiance context.
Is Malik there?
I think he might be
Can you hear
trying
me?
to. Hey, I think he's
I
back.
can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. I don't know what was going on. I think I plugged it in and maybe it cut the audio off. So I draft prenups, right? I draft prenups. People call me and say, hey, can you put a prenup together? In fact, I've got former clients that decide to make the stupid mistake of getting married again, and they ask me to do a prenup, so they haven't learned from their previous mistake, and they feel like I got them out of the first one. But so I understand as lay people, folks will have their opinions on what they think that a prenup is and does, but there are some occasions where there is a wealth or power dynamic at play in when a person is presented with a prenup. But I don't have any stars that that I've had ask me to draft a prenup for them. They've all just been regular rando people. Some folks, so prenups aren't there to basically, hey, I have all this and you're going to leave with what you came with. I mean, the law itself, as it relates to family law, you've got things like equitable distribution, you've got contribution, the same situation with, Dr. Dre's wife would come into play in a situation where a prenup is to be challenged, right? There's a whole procedure that you have to go through and follow when you're presented with a prenup. And, I've got people that have, a grocery store or a bookstore or I was getting ready to say this one thing, but I got a client that's that, so I can't say that. But they may have, usually it's a business. And then on the flip side, you've got people that, might be getting ready to go to medical school, and the other spouse is a doctor, right, or an attorney or something like that, some other kind, like an engineer or whatever. And their whole thing is, I anticipate maybe coming up and being highly successful, but I haven't got there yet, right? And so the issue ends up being, listen, we're both fairly or relatively successful people. The issue of money isn't and shouldn't come about. Shouldn't be, the determining factor as to whether or not we're going to get married or whatever. People draft these things and they're just like, here you go. It's not, you come with what you come with, I come with what I come with. Even in those situations, if you have kids, the issues of child support, the issues of if we have a house that we bought a house together, which becomes a marital asset and not just a house, not just a marital home, then it doesn't matter whether you got a prenup or not. Depending upon what money was used and the source of that money, it's still both of yours. You still both can decide, okay, well, I want to sell the house and I get half of it. So, when people think all I did was I came with what I came with, you were going to, if it was marital or non-marital, you were going to come with and or leave with that anyway. So the idea of basically spells out in advance of the actual marriage. You have prenups and you have what's called an antenup or a postnup. Excuse me, antenup is the same thing. Prenup or an antenuptial or a postnup. You have people that do postnups also. After we got married, we're going to have this agreement that says whatever it says. Anything that's in there is going to be a prenup or a postnuptial, same thing, right? And so, and they can say anything. They don't always just say you're not going to get this or you're going to get this or whatever the case might be. And in most cases, if the person who was to sign it, the person who was not, the signee, right, the person who it's designed for, to protect from per se, they have an obligation, unless they waive it, to have counsel review that, to make sure that all the things that are in there say what they're said, what they represent, what's being written. And if, and sometimes people just like, I don't care, just whatever. Yeah, well, those people get screwed over, maybe, if it's not challenged. Or they have an attorney look at it and says, yeah, listen, everything in here looks fine. You do understand what all of this stuff says, right? Yeah, okay. If you have kids, this is what's going to happen. If you have kids and you have property, this is what's going to happen. A business that pre-existed the marriage, or money that pre-existed the marriage, the new wife or husband who wasn't there to make that stuff or to help them make that, they don't get any of that anyway. It's only the amount of money that was made during the marriage. So when Jay and his girl split up, and and he's like, just go ahead and take everything. I don't care what it is that you want to take. If that stuff that the both of them, acquired while they were married, well, she had, he didn't do anything. I mean, sorry to bust your bubble, homeboy, but she didn't do, he just said, listen, I'm not going to object to you taking your stuff, right? But if it was something that, say, his grandma gave him beforehand and she really liked it, but it was something he got when he was like 8 and, had it before the marriage and during the marriage, and she was like, I really, really like this. Your grandma, I know your grandma gave it to you, but can I have that? You're like, you go fuck yourself. This is mine. It's the same situation. You see what I'm saying? But a prenup just outlines those specific things that they were probably already going to get. A prenup basically presupposes the things that would possibly be the both of theirs, but one of them says, you know what? It's tied to something that you've already been doing, so I'm going to go ahead and let you keep that because I don't have any part of that, right? Dr. Dre's new wife, if he gets married, if he's dumb enough to get married again, if he's got let's say he's got $1 billion and his new wife does all the same stuff that Nicole did, but all of his money is derivative of that first $1 billion, she could very easily say, listen, you're basically just making interest off of that original $1 billion. I don't want any part of that because I had nothing to do with that. However, if we buy a house and build the house together, and we bought this house for say 10 grand, and the house, whether it's because you're Dr. Dre or not, it appreciates to $20 million and we sell it, regardless of what that prenup said, 10 million of that is mine. And it doesn't matter what the prenup says. You see what I'm saying? So I think a lot of people have a misconception of what prenups are because they saw it on TV, and it's always from the perspective of the jilted wife, or, you see Dateline and it's like, so the guy that had the 90-day fiance, and I didn't see that particular episode, but, that's why they have him on TV, because that's, entertaining. Is poor lady from, backwoods Malaysia who's marrying this rich guy who, owns the Dollar General store, or I guess, don't you guys have a store? Was it P World or something like that? P's World or something?
I've got a 99p store.
99, yeah. So that owns that. He's like, I'm gonna do a prenup and all this other stuff. Well, she wouldn't get any of that money anyway, but anything that they bought together, she might, so, and it might be muddled. So if he wants to do a prenup, but he's probably only thinking, well, I'm just going to protect all of the stuff that I already have from this lady. And it's like, well, she was never going to get that anyway, unless, the laws of the jurisdiction are different. But, if it's community property or something goofy. But, so I think a lot of people have a misconception of what they are. There's nothing wrong with them if the two people agree to it. There are some cases where there's, a power dynamic that's different in the whole nine. But like Jorgina said, if you're in it for love, then you're there and you'll go ahead and do it because you love that person and all this other stuff. Marriage originally was never any of that stuff. It was a contract. It was to prevent one tribe from attacking and killing the other tribe, right? So, and then we just decided that it was all about love until, we see Checo on video. So,
yeah.
And that's the crazy part is, we end up seeing stuff on TV and we formulate our opinions based upon what we thought. And, Google's, law department is fantastic, but in reality, it ends up, that's part of the reason why family law is so difficult. We have to have a knowledge of almost every single type of law, IP, criminal in some cases, because we deal with that with domestic violence, property, all of this stuff. Whereas you have specific real estate, you have specific real estate attorneys who could never do what we do. We have to know, we don't have to be an expert on all that other stuff, but we have to know enough to be dangerous in all of those. And, people say, oh, family law is easy. It's just, one person getting a divorce, and it's like, okay, well, you're the reason why those people are over there homeless and their kids are starving and trying to get, are in foster care now, because you thought that family law was easy, and it's not. And you can laugh and joke about all this stuff. Like, I'm stupid anyway, but you can laugh and joke about half of the stuff because, you encounter this. And again, I used to teach law. So you encounter all this stuff and people like, oh, well, this lady felt jilted. And I'm like, what did she do? And then when it all comes out, it's like, she did that. Oh, but men have the same misconceptions about child support and all the other kind of stuff. Like, oh, she's just doing it for her hair and nails and all that stuff. And it's like, okay. And so I crushed those dreams too. Mm-hmm. Right. So, I guess long story short, prenups, postnups are stupid. Prenups, yeah, they can be important. I see the value. They have some value. If Shakira wanted to come up and it's like, you know what, I'm gonna show, what was it, PK? I'm gonna show PK and I'm gonna marry Malik, and I'm be like, cool. All right. You're not really showing him anything. You coming up for yourself. But would she make me sign a prenup? I'll sign a prenup. I don't like her music anyway, so whatever.
Man, the hips don't lie.
Does she have hips? Let's just be honest. Yeah, I respect Colombian. Let me shut up. I'm sorry, Jorgina.
And on that note, we were speaking about PKs. There was a very, interesting PK that was in the news last week.